if you run a team like a law firm, you've probably been caught in this same trap that everyone comes to you with their problems, and then you're forced to spoon feed solutions. It is a massive time and energy drain. Guess what though? You can't scale if you're always playing this like whack-a-mole with issues across your entire team and organization at your law firm. The real problem though is that you don't have a framework that forces your team to think critically and come prepared to you. So in this episode, I'm going to show you Dan Martell's 131 leadership method, something I accidentally stumbled into in engineering way back, like over a decade ago, before Dan officially named it or even knew who Dan Martell was. So I can tell you this works because I've been using this for a long time. It'll transform your team and get them to become problem solvers. Because what they start showing up with is a clear description of the issue, 3 possible solutions, and 1 strong recommendation. So if you want to put an end to constant interruptions during your day and actually help to empower your team and your people to make smarter decisions, stick around. This one's going to be for you. When we started using this at the law firm, the entire team's decision-making capabilities changed, right? People that you didn't know if they could make decisions could. So instead of burning through all these hours in a day, brainstorming for them and figuring out the options for them, Tracy and I got to move to a yes or no role based on the recommendations they were bringing forward because they had already vetted them. It freed up our calendars, our time, our days, our meetings. We got to then move faster. And the best part, the team actually loves this because they now get to take ownership of the work because they are having a real say in it. All right, so first, what is the 131 framework from Dan Martell? It is 1 problem, 3 solutions, 1 recommendation. So, 1 problem. So the team member in front of you must be able to define the problem in a single statement. There's no rambling or confusion, and they have to actually be clear on it. This is the critical starting point because we have to actually know, what are we trying to do? If they don't know, how could they come up with ideas? If you don't know what you would want them to do, how could you ever expect them to have good ideas to come to you with? So this framing from upfront of the problem is really important. The next part then, this is kind of the fun part, 3 solutions. The person on your team needs to bring 3 ways to tackle whatever it is. So they have to think about it, research it, come up with ideas, evaluate the pros and cons. They actually have to have 3 whole ways forward. And you might be starting to think, there's no way they can because they can't come up with one now. It's because you've not pushed a framework like this down and delegated and taught them to do this. They will be able to, because I can tell you the proof is our team has, and when I was an individual contributor, I used this all the time as well. So they will be bringing 3 things forward. And the last then, and this part is where the magic starts to happen. They make a recommendation, and they have to commit to whatever they think is going to be best. You still get to make the ultimate decision, but you are wanting to start to vet how they think and why they came up with ones. They've got to kind of, make a little bit of a bet on themselves with which one do they want to use. So they will actually have to make a recommendation. So I said earlier, I did this in engineering way before I ever knew who Dan Martell was. So I'll never forget my first boss at Northrop Grumman back in 2008. And I was going to him first probably, 4 or 5 weeks in, I got real stuck. Back then, right, I was a young buck, whippersnapper, if you will. I love those terms. And I came to him with Bob, what do I got to do? And he coached me up. And he said, well, what do you think you should do? How do you think we should do it together? So I gave him an idea. And he asked if I had any other ways forward or any other thoughts. So I sat there and talked through some things, and I came up with a couple more. He pushed me for a couple more. I gave him 5 ways forward. He looked at me and said, forget this. He goes, which one do you think we should do? Or which one do you think would be best? Just curious what you think. So I told him, based on everything we'd talked through and everything I'd just come up with, that I felt one was better than the others. And I said that. And he leaned back in his chair, he smiled, and he said, look at that. You knew all along and didn't even need my help. As a young guy, 23 years old, this was really empowering. Man, you're right. I came in all stuck and I'm leaving. Good job. You figured this out. That is so important here is because it does empower your teams. I felt really good. Well, a couple of weeks go by and working on things, and we've got a big monthly touch point where we sit down and we're talking about different projects and things going on and career development, kind of a good one-on-one with a manager. And he's asking me about the project and the progress I'm making. I'm letting him know and we're talking through it. And he said, hey, in the future, how about when you get stuck like you did on that, why don't you come to me with 3 or 4 ideas? And I'm always here to talk it out if you need to. But I want you to come to me with 3 ideas or 4. And then I always want you to pick one and let me know which one you like the most. Which one you feel like, he said, and even if you really can't tell, what's your gut tell you? He said, it doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It doesn't mean that I'm going to pick it. And there could be other things going on where it could actually be the best one on paper, but because of budgets or other personnel or people, it might not happen. He goes, and I'll always do my best to then tell you why we are going with whichever option we're going with. Sound good? Cool, getting all the buy-in. I liked this. But he said, I want to start seeing how you think, and I want to start developing you from tackling problems. Here in engineering, we have to solve hard problems, and a lot of them are problems that we've never solved before. So I want to start developing you for that. Well, think about that. I'm 23 years old and working with this boss who's making me understand what I'm working on, come up with a handful of ideas, and then letting him know which one I like. And then he's going to give me the constant feedback on whether that's what we will do or not, and how come, as much as he's able to. Well, I carried these lessons forward for years. This really stuck with me, and I believe truly helped me solve problems better than sometimes other people. So when I was in Bettis Laboratory, still in engineering, I had another boss, and he loved this same kind of framework. Again, none of us knew who Dan Martell was, but this was something that was working in the engineering spaces. I'm not the only person who has worked through this, right? And so I would meet with him early on and started working with him. He really always wanted to know your ideas and your favorite one. He liked it because it really then helped him gauge how you saw the big picture, why you came up with the options you did, how you build out your pros and cons, what things you were considering or not considering. And then he loved knowing what you picked. He used the entire exercise as a teaching tool. If you worked with this guy for a year or two, think about how much it was changing us. We went from coming in hey, I'm stuck, to, hey, this is everything I've looked at. These are the options that I feel like are truly credible and viable. This one works better here. This works better here. This works better here. If you're asking for my 2 cents, I vote we go this way. Wow, what a different way to run a team. It was also a lot of fun as an engineer in this kind of a place because I did things that mattered. I had a say. What I was thinking about or working on truly was working. And I really want you to think about that for a moment. I'm telling you, as the person who was on the receiving end of this, it was fun. It was empowering. Instead of just always just doing, well, I don't know, my boss told me to just go do it again. It was a lot more of come up with how to do it and then go do it. When you do that, you get buy-in from your team. When you get buy-in, they're not going to second guess you so much. They're not going to be complaining. Why? Because they actually had a say in the path forward. This also helps people because when you get truly stuck on really, really complex issues, they knew that if I would always bring 3 things forward and make a recommendation. If I was truly getting stuck or jammed up on it, I would come and ask. Or I'd maybe make sure that I understood the problem or I had all the parameters in place. And your team will do that with you too. And look, even when you're going through the options, sometimes talking it out, you end up finding something that does. And so many times, just by coming in and saying, make sure I'm understanding this correctly, or what it is that you want, or what are the goals we're trying to achieve, you can actually start to then come up with your 3 ideas and actually see which recommendation you want to make forward. I've seen this firsthand, that this framework truly works for myself, but then for the people on our team here at the law firm. It works on really complex decisions, but it also works on like trivial things like the office gossip or who is remembering to dump out the coffee grounds in the coffee maker too. It works for everything. Everything is a problem, could have some solutions, and then the person gets to make a recommendation. I'm telling you, this always, 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 always works. Dan Martell's a freaking genius by capturing it and giving it more like legs with how he did it in his hyper-successful businesses. So for a moment now, I want to talk about, so like, really, why does this work? The psychology behind it. Well, in short, it empowers your team, it saves you time, and it builds a culture of ownership. But how does it do that? So the first part, it empowers your team. So look, instead of your team coming to you with just hands out, hey, help me, and them saying, hey, here's another problem. I just identified a problem for you to go fix. Tell me what to go do. They learn to think critically and they become problem solvers. And the cool downstream effect is this builds confidence and it makes them more capable. It takes someone who's, at this level, and it elevates them over time. Don't think about how this is going to go tomorrow or in 3 days from now, or about the problem that you know is going to come up tomorrow morning. Don't worry about it. Think about where this person is going to be in 6 or 12 months or 18 months. Think about after they get to use this framework and tackle problems with you, whether it's a couple times a day, daily, a few times a week. Think about after they get 50 or 100 or 200 repetitions, how good they're going to be at solving problems. So use the law firm owner, you're great at solving problems because at some point in your career, whether you had this framework or not, you started solving problems. There was some trial and error. Sometimes you got it right, sometimes you didn't. But by doing that and having to live with those consequences and work back through it, you got better at it. The thing we're trying to do here is help your team do that so that you don't have to make every decision. Why? Because decision fatigue is real. We can only ever make so many decisions in a day. The goal is to not make every decision. The goal is to only make the ones that only you're capable of making. You want to use this as a way to let your people take it further for you. So number two, then, it kind of ties in there. It saves you time, right? When you're making every decision, that takes a lot of time. When your team is making the decisions, just coming to you with a yes or no, it speeds it up and it saves you time. You can go do more impactful things, or you can just actually enjoy some of the time to yourself. Right? This is a way to say, don't just be a doer. We're going to develop you into being a thinker. And it is a real game changer for your law firm and for your team when they start getting to where their thinking has. This then goes into the third piece, building a culture of ownership. So that people feel heard, responsible, and proud when the recommended solutions make it to the end. Again, I can tell you as being an IC doing this, that it has helped me back in when I was a W-2 employee. I felt more important and more useful and like I contributed when I was doing these things. I've seen it here based on the discussions, conversations we have with our team. It really works. I want you to feel heard. Then because I active listen. No, people feel heard when they bring a solution that gets implemented. The problem is you might be thinking, I don't think their solutions are that good. It's up to you then as a leader to develop them so they are good solutions. So I'm telling you, when one of your ideas makes it through to the end, it feels good. I've done it. You've done it. We know that it feels good. Well, now you're giving that opportunity to everybody on your team. That is truly a recipe for success. So when we roll out 131, the first thing we need to do is decide we're going to do it. And then from there, you need to let everybody know. Tell your team, if you bring me a problem, I need you to come with 3 potential fixes or ideas and 1 recommendation. Here's the deal. You need to make it a policy. You need to make it, it's going to happen. Do you know what the hardest part is? It's you. And it's your role. You need to stop fixing and you need to stop taking over. You need to let them have the ideas. You need to start wearing your leader hat, not your fixer hat. And in a small business, that is really hard. But this is one of these steps that moves us into the leader and starting to look at the challenging problems that only you can solve. And over time, then you will find somebody and you'll allow them to work through one on even the more challenging problems. The goal long-term is not to keep everything to yourself. The goal long-term is to develop talent so that they can do things for you. What's crazy, sometimes you actually find out they're better at it than you ever were. So, some employees are going to be like, this is not for me. I don't think I'm a problem solver. They could struggle. So you're going to need to give them tools, show them examples, walk them through it, talk them through this initially. They are going to need handholding. That's okay. That's part of developing people. This is not going to be perfect on day one. Stop worrying about that. The big thing is like The Rock says, one day or day one. Instead of talking about doing these kinds of things, we need to actually make it just day one. We're going to start. Let's see, we're at a day 30, a day 90, a day 365. And you're going to find some people on your team that were born to handle this. What's wild is it's not always going to be who you think. The people that sometimes excel at this quickly are not who you thought. And sometimes the people that you thought were going to do great can struggle. The goal is that we help everybody move forward and everybody to develop and everybody to get better. Remember, the goal is not for you to make every decision. Because if that's the point, then what is your team here for? Now, look, you've got to hold them accountable. If someone shows up in your office empty-handed, what do we do? I'm stuck. Where do I go from here? It is up to you to remind them about this. Don't cave in. They need to do the thinking, so you've got to hold the line on that. And over time, your team's recommendations actually get better and better. Sometimes early on, of the three, one might be decent, one might be not very good, and one might be downright terrible. Or two can be terrible, one's okay, and then they're picking the okay one. Over time, you'll get them thinking about three good solutions and different ways forward to then come to you with, I like this, but based on context or whatever, maybe there's some underlying goals I don't know about, you may pick one of the other ones. Again, now, think about how much this is streamlining you. And then you teach them, and we iterate on this, and they get better and better over time. The big piece here then is we've got to coach them up. When they can do better, we want to help them through that. We want them to self-discover. When they do a good job, praise them up, let them know, celebrate the wins. Like them coming up with ideas and thinking through problems is a win. Make sure they know that. Make sure they understand how important this is and how helpful it is. Please, places where you can get stuck with this is that sometimes people are going to push back. They're used to you giving the answers. They might even think that is the whole point of the relationship and how it works. So encourage them, that's okay that this is different. Let them know that they might fail. Let them know that it's okay if it's not ideal or perfect, that the point is that it's to learn and it's to develop over time, and you're here to guide through that. One of the big pieces, when they understand it's okay to fail or it's okay to be less than perfect, it takes the pressure off. And they can actually start thinking, because they're not worried about this must be perfect. They start worrying and focusing on, I need three ideas and I need to figure out which one I think is the best one and why. They need to know we want them to succeed and we believe they can. You hired them because they're smart, because they're hardworking, because they have the skills to succeed at this. Let them know that. From there, though, we've got to make sure that each problem is well-defined. Vague issues lead to vague answers. Lots of problems come up right here, right? So like a lot of the time, if someone can't come up with that, what is the one problem? Help them figure it out. Everything can be reduced down to one problem. It might be a sequence of one problem, so we need to worry about the first one first. Or it may feel like it's spider webs. What is the root problem? This is a skill on the more complex issues at hand. Spending time to help your team develop a way and a mechanism to identify problems is critical. A lot of folks can throw spaghetti and won't come up with ideas. It's very different to say, I actually understand the core problem, therefore I can come up with reasonable solutions that fix this. Oftentimes when people come up with solutions that are not very good, it's so often rooted in them not actually understanding what the real problem is. Help them understand that, and then everything flows downward, and it's much, much, much easier. And again, last big problem that can come up often is being inconsistent. And this is back on you. You have to apply this every time. If they come in your office and it's a raw and they don't bring 131 and you're like, I'm just not that worried about it right now, they get used to it. So you skip it and start letting it slide. The framework falls apart. And then guess whose fault it is? It's not theirs. It's your fault. I keep saying this because it's so true. You are going to be the key to this working or not. Hold the line, stick to it. You can do it. Here's the deal. Like you will be, when you do this, you move away from being the bottleneck or where everything must come to you, and people can do more. You're more like a final checkpoint. You bless it off at the end. Much better way to be. It moves you into the role you're supposed to be, which is leader. But remember, leaders don't do everything. Instead, they help others think, solve problems, and do things. Leaders are enablers of the good. That's you, and that's what you need to do. This also then helps with morale. People like having a say in the business and in what they're working on. It's motivating to see your action come through from your own ideas. So let those people do that. I'm going to be honest with you, they get hooked. It's fun. It makes it more interesting to come up with ideas and make recommendations. They feel like they're part of the problem-solving team because they are. Let them enjoy it. Let it be special. Let it be great. Having a say matters. And at the end, this truly speeds you up. Instead of scheduling so many back and forth meetings, you can finally make a solution and get a recommendation and make it all happen much faster. Instead of your team coming to you with questioning and going back and forth and iterating on it, they have a solid 1-3-1. We're talking seconds or minutes, not hours and days. This really speeds things up. But if you're going to keep letting your team dump every issue in your lap, then guess what? You're going to stay in firefighting mode. You're going to be exhausted, overwhelmed, and you're never going to break through that ceiling. And that's what's holding you back. That then causes frustration, and worse, it causes burnout for you. When you implement Dan Martell's 1-3-1 framework, something I've been literally doing now since 2008, you create a culture of real problem solvers and accountability, and your team is going to have a lot of fun with this. They start bringing curated solutions, great ideas, and then you get to move quicker. And speed in business is one of the biggest things. The best businesses move quickly, bad businesses move slow. This is an element of speed. It also then lets you focus on the really hard ones where you're making your own 1-3-1. It keeps you from draining all of your own mental bandwidth. Look, we rolled this out to the law firm, and it has worked for me for years and countless others in the engineering world. With our team doing this, whenever somebody new comes in and we put this out to them, we see them instantly moving into problem-solving mode, wanting to understand the why, and it's good for them, it's good for us, and it's good for everybody. So if you're ready to stop being the only one in the room who's coming up with decisions, use 1-3-1. It's your ticket to have your team learn how to do this. All right, if you found this helpful, let me know in the comments. What's the biggest bottleneck where you're getting stuck, where you could use somebody on your team to solve some problems, and maybe how 1-3-1 could help you? So let me know. And if you want to see more frameworks like this on how to grow and scale a business and move you more into the leadership role, make sure you subscribe or follow for our next episode.